Hi, this is Amanda for Lavinia World, and today we're going to be making it's either a galaxy or you can think of it as a Northern Lights card, and I kind of think it looks more like the Northern Lights. So let's get started. I'm using a masking stencil. Now this one I made with my Cricut, but there are several companies out there that make masking stencils. So you could use one of those, or you could just use a die cut a circle die. Here we go, if I can talk, and cut some thick cardstock or something, acetate, something like that. So I'm using Distress Oxide with squeezed lemonade and just ink blending inside that circle mask. And this is going to be my moon. And so I started with squeezed lemonade, and I'm just using a light touch here. I didn't want it to be extremely bright, but I did want to have the moon be somewhat bright because it kind of is bright. And so now I'm switching to scattered straw because, like I said, I didn't want it to be extremely bright. And scattered straw is more of a muted yellow. And so I'm just going to fill in the rest of the moon with the scattered straw. And then I'm going to switch to pumice stone because the moon does have like craters and some texture in it. And so I thought that I would add that in there. And I've got this like funny shaped, like, I don't know if this would be like for your eyebrows or eyelashes or what exactly that's used in the makeup world, but it's kind of a funny shaped brush. So I added some lines with that, and then I switched to this really small round brush and added like more of the craters. And then I decided that I really didn't like it. It was kind of like harsh, like some harsh edges and whatnot. So I came back in with my yellow brush that had scattered straw still on it, and I'm trying to blend that out. And you can still see them, but they are more blended out. So I'm going to take this smaller oval brush, and I did want it to be kind of small, and I'm going to go around the edges of the moon with the pumice stone, just to kind of give it more of a hazy kind of moon look, I guess. And then I'm going to blend that out with some scattered straw again. And that's going to finish up our moon. So now I'm going to take the inner piece of the stencil and I'm going to pop that in there. And that is going to protect the moon while I do the rest of my ink blending. And I didn't mention this before, but I do have pixie spray on the back of my stencils. So that way it stays in place while I'm doing all this ink blending, and I don't have to tape it down or hold it down or any of that. And I am going to put my fingers over the moon part while I do this ink blending, just so I have a place to hold my paper and my fingers stay somewhat clean. So I started off with some salty ocean, and now I'm going to move to peacock feathers. And I'm just going to randomly ink blend some colors on here. And it's just going to be random, and it's going to look weird. And it's going to look worse before it looks better. Your ink blending does not have to be perfect here. You don't have to blend the colors all that great into each other. I mean, I blend them a little bit into each other. You will see me go back and forth a little bit as we get more colors blended into each other. So I will go back and forth between the two colors a little bit. But for the most part, it's just random. It's going to be splotchy. It's going to look weird. But don't worry about it. It will look better in the end. As you saw my finished card pictures in the beginning, it will look great in the end, but right now it's gonna look weird and it's gonna look like poo. But just stick with it. It's every time I've ever done a galaxy background or this, I don't know, they're kind of the same technique. The galaxy background, the Northern Lights background, they're basically the same thing, and at least to me. One you kind of splatter some stars on, and the other one you just kind of leave it as is, in my opinion. But they always look worse before they look better. So now the only thing that I would have changed with this card, I think, if I was going to do this one again with these same color combinations, instead of using the chipped sapphire, I think I would have used the blueprint sketch. And I did have that on the screen. You might have seen it real quick. And I changed to, I think, the wilted violet instead. But I think instead of using the chipped sapphire, I think I would have used the blueprint sketch instead, because the chipped sapphire is such a dark blue. It's almost black. So when I cover it up with this Distress ink, in black soot, and the rest of them were just Distress Oxide. So notice I'm using Distress ink now. It just kind of goes away. And so I think that I would have used a brighter blue, more like the Blueprint Sketch, instead of the Chip Sapphire. All right, so now we're going to go over it in Distress ink. And the reason why I'm using the ink instead of the Oxide is because, in my opinion, black soot in Distress Oxide is more of a gray than a black. And you want black here. You don't want gray, because when the night sky is dark, it's black. It's not really gray. So I did switch to Distress ink, and you're just going to start covering up areas. Now you want to go all the way around the edges. And this is how I do it, is I go all the way around the edges, and then I just start covering up some spots in the middle. You don't want to cover up everything, but you do want to have some pretty good coverage. And you're thinking, why did you blend all those colors if you're just going to cover them up? Well, you don't want to cover all of them up. You just want to cover some of them up. You want to have some peeking out, and some you may not, you might have some faded area in some areas, and some really dark black in some areas. But as you can see, I have some of those colors popping through. All right, so now we're going to get on to some stamping and some more assembly of this card. So I have the Christmas Eve stamp from Lavinia Stamps here, and it's basically Santa with his reindeer and his sleigh. And I put it on my stamp positioner, and then I curved the stamp. So you can do that with the photopolymer stamps, and it's fine. You're not going to hurt your stamp. It'll go back to straight when you take it off the stamp positioner or your acrylic block, whatever you happen to be using. And I'm going to stamp this in VersaFine Nocturne. Lost the name there for a second. And we're just stamping this on some Nina 80-pound cardstock. And I'm just going to stamp it. And then when I get done, I'm going to take this over to my scanning cut, and I'm going to cut it out. Now, it's not going to cut out all those little dots, as you can see here behind his sleigh. That's fine. I don't really care about that. So now I'm going to put the negative piece back in my stamp positioner and pop that Santa and his sleigh back in. And now I cleaned my stamp, and we're going to stamp it in Versamark. And the reason why I'm doing this, and we're going to use our anti-static powder tool real quick. The reason why I'm doing this is because I wanted him to sparkle. I wanted the reindeer and everything to sparkle. Well, there's going to be a lot of sparkle on this card, actually. One of my favorite things, I don't know if I've said it in the Lavinia videos before, but if you watch my regular channel, one of my favorite embossing powders around this time of year is the Ranger Holographic embossing powder. It is just gorgeous, and it really looks good if you put it over black stamping. So I'm going to heat emboss this with the holographic embossing powder. Now, the reason why that stuck to my stamp platform there is because I use a spray adhesive, a repositionable spray adhesive over my scan and cut mats. And so the first couple times that I use it, and I just redid my mat, it's a little sticky on the back of the paper. So that's why it was so sticky to my stamp platform there. Just a little tidbit there. All right, so then I wanted these, I wanted this like snowy hill, and I'm using glitter cardstock from Craft Perfect Tonic, whatever you want to call them, there. So I placed my hill down first so I could get position for the tree scene stamps from Lavinia Stamps there. So I just placed those down, and then I removed my glitter cardstock there, because I did want the stumps of the trees to go down just a little bit underneath that cardstock, so it actually looked like the trees were sitting in the snow instead of like floating on top of the snow. I wanted to get the placement just perfect for that, so that is why I had that there. And now we're just going to stamp those in the VersaFine Clair Nocturne again, and we're going to emboss those with the embossing powder, the holographic embossing powder. Now, I'm not going to stamp these in Versamark because VersaFine is a pigment ink, and it will stay wet long enough to emboss with your embossing powders. But the reason why I had to stamp the Santa with the Versamark is because I had to let it dry in order to cut him out with my scanning cut. So that's why I had to stamp him in the Versamark. So we're just going to stamp this out, and then I'm just going to emboss that with the holographic embossing powder. All right, so let's pour some holographic embossing powder on there. And I did use all the stamps from the tree scene That is what it's called, right? I'm not calling that something funny. Yes, tree scene. Just want to make sure. All right, now I pulled out these snowflakes from Lavinia stamps, and we are going to, I'm just using Versamark on these because I didn't want black snowflakes. And because the background is already dark, they're going to show up just fine. I find that this embossing powder doesn't show up real well on light surfaces, light colored surfaces. I mean, it does show up. You can see it. It's sparkly, but it has more of an impact when it's on darker colors. So I'm just going to stamp these out several times here in Versamark, and then we're going to cover these in the holographic embossing powder because everything just has to be sparkly around Christmas time. I'm not a big fan of loose glitter, but I love this this holographic embossing powder. It's just gorgeous. All right, so then I decided that I was going to figure out where exactly I'm going to place Santa and his reindeer. And when I make cards, I might have a vague idea of what I'm going to do, but I usually don't plan everything out. So when I stamped him on white, I wanted him to stand out from the background, but when I put it on the card front here, I was like, that stands out way too much. The white just sticks out like a sore thumb. So I just took my my ink blending tool that already had who knows what colors of blue inks on it at this point because I've used it to ink blend the background. And I just grabbed it and I just used whatever ink was on there and just ink blended it on there. Because I didn't want it to be black or didn't want it to be white, but I didn't want it to stand out a lot from the background. I wanted to kind of blend in, but I obviously wasn't going to get a perfect ink blend of what colors were on the background because that would be pretty much impossible at this point because there's so many different colors. So I just ink blended that on there and that way it wasn't stark white. Now we're just going to spray some water on my background, and I did want to cover up my moon because I didn't want it to have the splatters. So I just put that mask back on there. And then we're just going to splatter some water on there and sop it up with my tea towel real quick. And that way we get some texture in the sky. They could be stars, they could be whatever. That way we get a little bit of texture in the sky. All right, so then I was looking at the background. I'm like, I need some kind of sentiment or something. And so I pulled out the Believe stamp from Lavinia Stamps. And we're going to, you guessed it, heat emboss the stamp on the background. So I'm just going to put some more powder on the back here because I had already wiped it off at this point before I wiped or put splatters on there. And so we're going to stamp this in the VersaFine Clair Nocturne again. And then we're going to cover it with the Ranger Holographic Embossing Powder. And I just love how that sentiment turned out, stamped over the moon in the background. I think it is very Christmassy because everybody needs to believe in the magic of Christmas. And again, we're going to pour the holographic embossing powder over the sentiment and heat set that off screen. So then I pulled out some black sapphire glitter cardstock from Tonic. I covered the back of my panel with score tape because that's what I like to use when I am adhering panels to glitter cardstock because, well, let's face it, not a lot of adhesives like to stick to glitter cardstock. And I'm just going to pull up the backing papers. And when I use score tape, I like to just pull up the corners and then get my panel on there, make sure that it's straight and whatnot, and then I will remove the rest of the adhesive the rest of the backing papers once I get it on there in the way that I want it. That way I'm not dealing with all that adhesive all at once. Because if I don't get it on there straight, that score tape's really sticky and it's kind of hard to deal with. It probably wouldn't be so bad on glitter paper, but if you're adhering to regular paper, it can be a bear to pull that panel up if you get it down crooked. So then I decided that I wanted to put my little glitter snow hill down, and I had this cut to size, but then at one point off screen I cut my panel down a little bit, so now I needed to cut the glitter hill down. If I could talk, that would be great. All right, so now we're going to glue that little glitter hill down where it's supposed to be. And then we will move on to popping up Santa and his reindeer because, well, he's in the sky and I just feel like things like that just need to be popped up with some foam tape. So I pulled out some glitter not glitter squares, oh my goodness, some foam squares from scrapbook.com, and I just lined the back of Santa and his reindeer with those and popped it up so he's flying over the moon and over that little sentiment there. And I think that just looks fantastic. Now we're just going to glue all of this down to my white card base, which is an A2 card base, and it's a top folding card base. So I hope that you enjoyed the card today, and don't forget that the supplies are listed in the description box below with links to the products in the Lavinia World store. Also, the link to the Anything Lavinia World Facebook group is in the description box below, along with my personal social media links if you would like to follow me on my channel if you are watching this on the Lavinia World channel. If you're watching this on my channel, the Lavinia World YouTube channel will be linked in the description box below as well, so that you can follow them over there. And as always, have a great day.